Hi, thank you for coming. This is really weird that this is finally happening because we've been planning this for a while, and I'm so glad that, there's this amount of people. So yeah, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the team mainly because it wasn't just me. And I've got a really long thing, but I won't read it all, but I'll just give a little intro because 50GS is only in its second year. We're really like a baby, and it was created by Josh Simpson last year, and then we took over. I was like in a weird house. I didn't really have a home, and I was recovering from the flu, and for some reason I thought it'd be a good idea to put myself forward as editor-in-chief, and I still don't really know why I did that. I think I was a little bit high off the drugs from the flu, because usually I would not want to do this at all. But then I got voted editor-in-chief, and I still don't really know. Well, I do know it was thanks to our poetry gal. So thank you. And yeah, so when that all happened, that was when I first met Liz, who is now, thank God, our managing editor, and this couldn't have happened without her. Liz is an absolute rock star, and just oh yeah, that was when I first witnessed Liz in all her uncompromising organisation, is how I put it. And yeah, a lot of this is thanks to her. She's put so much work and dedication into this issue and the event and the website, and just makes everything in order, which is something I'm not good at all. But specifically tonight, this event was made specifically for the journal, which we've released, the issue, and a lot of that is down to Eloise, who is our creative director. She's the one who designed the whole thing, just on her own, on her laptop, in our flat mostly. So hopefully you've seen it by now. It looks beautiful, and if you haven't, make sure you go and see it and share it with everyone. And then this event itself is mainly thanks to Chelsea, who's our events manager, and all of this is down to her. She got everything, and she's also the treasurer, so she's doing both those things at once, while also working in Spoons, which is not the best place to work, and while not even living in Edinburgh. So she's also a superhero, and also the sweetest person in the universe. Then Sam, our fiction editor. Is Sam here?
I'm here.
There she is! Sam, our fiction editor, she just went above and beyond, always. Amazing, amazing. Thank you, Sam. And then our poetry editors, Eloise. No, that's Eloise. Ali and Paige, also amazing. And then Daniel. Where is Daniel? There he is. Daniel, late addition to the non-fiction. Thanks, Daniel. Yeah. And then, so not only did we do the issue and have this event, but also we completely redesigned the website. And when I say we, it was actually Harriet who did it all. So Harriet definitely needs a round of applause because she did that whole thing. So yeah, this was not easy to put together, and it was everyone who worked really hard, all the contributors I'd like to thank too, and everybody that's reading tonight, thank you so much for doing this. I chose empathy as our theme for the journal because it did seem pertinent in these times that we're living in. I think empathy is the foundation to almost everything human, every interaction we have and every piece of art. I couldn't have picked any other theme, I don't think, because not only is it relevant to what's happening at the moment, but also the way we all work together was so collective that we had to have empathy. We had to have a lot of empathy with each other. So that was why I chose the theme of empathy. And now I'd like to introduce Briana Pegado, She's going to speak a little bit on empathy. She was named one of the 30 under 30 inspiring women in Scotland for 2017, which is pretty amazing. The co-founder of Povo, is that her name? A consultancy that uses principles of play and the creative process to help people, collectives and organisations that are stuck with their ideas. And she's also supporting the founder of Inner Truth with developing his media company, which explores the question of what does it mean to be truly alive, which I think is very relevant to now. So welcome, Briana.
So when I was thinking about the theme of empathy, the first thing that came to my mind was the idea of being an empath. And the first thing I wanted to ask tonight is actually how many of you in the room, how many of you have come across the term empath or feel you identify with it? If you could just give me a show of hands. Come on, a bit higher. Okay, so a few. Empaths quite often take on emotions and absorb the emotions in a room or in an environment to a point that it directly affects them. And though the term empathy, of course, means to be able to understand or feel a different person's emotions or someone else's emotions, I think as creatives and as writers, the ability to empathize is fundamentally important. But many of us have an extreme end of that spectrum where we take on those emotions that we interact with. I'll kind of come back to this a bit later. But when I was little and growing up, I was an empath, and I still am. I was the kind of person that if I heard a helicopter above really hovering, I could feel that noise and it would shake me to my core. If someone was shouting loudly at dinner, or if I picked up on a smell, I could just smell it and embody it. And as I got older, I really realized that my ability to pick up on these scents and smells and emotions actually had to do with my sensitivity. And I often took a lot of time to process these emotions and these feelings through writing, and found that when I would write, I could really either put a boundary up or process these emotions in a way that would mean they could make more sense to me, and it was how I would make sense of the world. I think earlier, when kind of Eloise was talking about empathy and how important it is in this time, we often kind of see in the media and in day-to-day life world events that take place, there's often talk of a growing epidemic of mental ill health amongst millennials and amongst people of our generation. And I think that kind of the rise in social media and our ability to see these events and engage with them on a day-to-day basis means that we're constantly bombarded with these emotions. But I also believe that this is what makes us fundamentally human. If you look at why, what humankind means and what it means to be human, out of all the other animals in the animal kingdom, our ability to empathize and to feel the emotions of others is what makes us human. And I've spent a lot of time over the last years kind of processing what it means to be empathetic. And I'm not here tonight to tell you that empathy is important or that you should incorporate it into your day-to-day lives. But what I actually wanted to talk about tonight was emotions. And kind of growing up and being that very sensitive child and realizing that actually I spend a lot of time engaging with people and talking to people and working with people, but my energy that I kind of take in from those interactions drains me quite a lot. And when I think about emotions, sometimes we spend a lot of time as human beings kind of trying to avoid emotions or stop them or name them or process them. And actually, when it comes down to it, our emotions are part of who we are. If when you're angry, your reaction is to stop being angry or to question it or challenge it or wonder why it's taking place, it's really important to remind yourself that anger is an important emotion that's just as valid as happiness or joy or fear. And I think this dichotomy of emotions and kind of really being able to experience the opposite of without fear you can't feel love, without anger you can't feel joy, is really important because it kind of enables us to have a kind of way of comparing our emotions and understanding what they are and mean, but more importantly help us be alive and kind of experience day-to-day life in a really fulfilling way. When I was looking at this journal today, it really struck me the kind of breadth of experience that writers have had in terms of their own personal experiences, journeys, and interactions. And I think what this journal really encapsulates through this issue is the importance of empathy, but also how important it is to recognize that our ability to empathize with others fundamentally comes back to our ability to empathize with ourselves. If we don't come to terms with our own emotions and how we're feeling, how can we ever interact with anyone else's emotions and how they're feeling? And I think that power of being able to feel an experience, and also feel an experience to a point that you can understand someone else and what they're experiencing in life, is so important, but it's something to really cultivate. Now, for the people in the room that raised their hand when I asked how many of you are empaths or feel that you experience your emotions so fully and it can be overwhelming at times, I think the ability to do that is so important, and it's an ability that we can all cultivate. But I also think as creatives and writers, it's so important to make sure that in your kind of process of empathizing and interacting with one another, that you also put up boundaries and understand and appreciate that it's important to be able to see someone else in their experience and feel it deeply, but also to protect yourself and make sure that when you're feeling how another person's feeling, that you don't take it on yourself. And I think as kind of time goes on and society moves and we're constantly exploring emotions and feelings and how that's impacting our mental health and how that's impacting our society, this ability to feel really can spur great action as well. When I woke up this morning, I had kind of an off day. I remember waking up today and I'd slept through my alarm. I went to the office and realized that I'd been an hour late to a meeting that I completely missed. I tried to send an email 5 times that kept getting deleted and erased. And I was sitting there today thinking, like, what's going on here? Am I just having an off day? And realized that I was really feeling quite a lot. And as I sat through my day and started to think about, why am I feeling so off? Like, what's going on? I ran through my weekend in my head and thought, well, I had a nice time, I watched great films, I relaxed, and I rested. But I was on Facebook today and something hit me in the face. I was watching a video about the shooting that took place in Florida over the weekend. And as an American, it's something I absolutely cannot ignore because it's part of the cultural fabric of where I grew up and impacts me as a human. And I was watching a speech by one of the survivors of the shooting. And she was so impassioned, and she'd been in this horrible scenario and situation, but had taken the time to process how she was feeling, and basically gave one of the most spurring speeches that will be remembered as a historical speech about gun control in the United States. And as I was sitting there watching this video, I realized that I'd been watching these videos all weekend, and though I thought I could handle it, or I could process it, or it was just part of the news that I received on a day-to-day basis, I realized that actually this film had really impacted me subconsciously. And as human beings, we all experience the same emotions. And what I realized is kind of this collective feeling of rage, of anger, of hope, spurred on a group of teenagers who are standing right now outside of the Washington, D.C. White House that are staging a sit-in to protest gun control and to bring in gun control measures. And the reason why I share this anecdote is because their empathy for those survivors in that situation and the waves that it sent through this country have spurred action. And I ultimately think that empathy can really help us to, of course, feel what others are feeling, but ultimately take that and to do something with it. The last thing I'll say is that I think that this journal really encompasses and embodies that, taking action, sharing experience, and sharing stories and knowledge about what it means to be human and why it's important. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Clarissa, and I don't belong here, or at least that's what I tell myself. It's what I feel. Every day, every time I'm invited to something cool, I think I'm an imposter. You know, somehow I've tricked this room of cool people into listening to me, and someday they're going to figure out that I'm just not supposed to be here. I'm not the only one who thinks that way. And the good news is, we're all super wrong. And here's why. Imposter syndrome is basically any time when something you've worked hard for, you get there, and it's great, and you suddenly think, wait a second, I don't deserve this. There's some clerical error in the universe that brought me here. I'm not worthy. And there's no easy way around that. This isn't my TED Talk about how to combat imposter syndrome and solve it all forever, because if it was, and I don't even know, so many things would have been different across the course of time that I don't even want to get into it. But the only real way I know how to deal with imposter syndrome is to beat it at its own game. Imposter syndrome it's basically a lie, and the only way to beat it is to lie right back and say it doesn't exist. FDR said that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. No offense to him. I don't know what kind of thinking, what that gave him. But for me, that's kind of like standing in between two mirrors and trying to see the end of a reflection. The only thing we have to fear is fear of fear of fear. There's no end. So the only way to stop that fear is just walk up one of those mirrors. Put a wall in front of it and say, okay, I know that there's a mirror behind there. I know that fear is still present, but I'm not going to pay attention to it. And a great thing to build that wall with is just realizing everyone has those mistakes. Everyone has that self-doubt. I figured that out at a writer's conference a little while back. I was there sort of always in the back of my mind thinking, should I get someone coffee? I want to be useful. I shouldn't be here unless I'm doing something that's going to help someone else, because these people are all way better than me and I'm taking up space that I shouldn't. And I kept feeling like that through breakfast and through lunch, and then finally at dinner I was doing one of those corny getting to know you games, and we hit on, what's your biggest anxiety about being here? And one of these brilliant people who I'd been admiring and thinking was way better than me just all day said exactly what I was thinking, which was, what if someone asks me why I'm here? What am I doing here? And everyone laughed because same, but I just realized something, all of us having the same emotion at the same time. And I'd spent the entire day envious of these people, giving our pitches and workshopping our stuff. They were all so great and so wonderful. If they were feeling this way, the same way I was feeling, maybe I was actually of that same caliber. Maybe these feelings we had in common were equally false for all of us. So I'm going to give some probably terrible in every other situation advice, which is just fake it till you make it. Lie to yourself, tell yourself that fear doesn't exist, because it really doesn't. After a while, faking it, you will make it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just the sort of person who's really great at lying to themselves. That's been said. But I think that a big part of empathy and of getting to sort of feel other people's emotions is remembering that sometimes those emotions don't have their basis in the actual truth of who people are. Sometimes those are just a mirror image, and as soon as you walk away from the mirror, they're gone.
I know one day we'll find the means to look inside our brains Just a pocket full of
I've got the pleasure of being able to introduce 3 poets, you guys now. The first of which is Russell Jones, who's a writer and an editor. He's the deputy editor of Shoreline of Infinity, which is the only science fiction magazine we have in Scotland. And yeah, he's published 3 small collections, the latest of which is The Green Dress Whose Girl Is Sleeping. And he's a wonderful, wonderful writer, so I'll hand you over to him.
When I was invited to do poetry, I thought I'm in the storytelling centre, and I never read one of my stories. I write like little stories for Disney, Animal World, and I thought we're here, so I wanted to do it. There are some weird rules when you write for Disney. You're not allowed to, for example, include what's it called when we the same species? Cannibalism. That's it. You're not allowed to include cannibalism because there was a barbecue with Huey, Louie, and Dewey, and it all went wrong apparently. So anyway, a side note, but. Yeah. This one's about Donald Duck, and he's going camping with some caracals, who are big cats. Donald Duck packed a book for his camping trip. It was a beautiful sunny day, and he was looking forward to having some time to himself. Uncle Donald, I want to join you on your camping trip, cried Huey. I don't do the voices. Donald Duck waved goodbye as he left the house. Sorry, I want to read my book alone today. Donald walked to the market and brought a juicy orange to eat on his camping trip. Dewey was at the market looking at the exciting fruits and vegetables. Uncle Donald, can I come on your camping trip? Asked Dewey. Sorry, I want to eat my orange alone today, Donald said as he waved goodbye. Donald visited the forest and found some dry sticks for his campfire. He saw Louie climbing a tree. Uncle Donald, I'd like to camp with you, Louie shouted from high up in the tree. Sorry, I want to sit by the campfire alone today, Donald shouted. But be careful and I'll see you tomorrow. Donald found the perfect spot to set up camp. There were colourful flowers, soft grass to sit on, and 4 cute caracals playing together. The perfect place. I can read my book, eat my orange, and sit by the campfire, Donald thought. The caracal. Donald sat on the soft grass and read his book, the sunlight shining on his face. As he watched the caracals playing together, he thought about his family. I want to spend some time alone, Donald thought, but I wonder if I should have invited Huey, Dewey, and Louie on a camping trip. He hoped they were having fun without him. As he started to eat his orange, he noticed the caracals were also eating. 3 of them finished quickly and wanted to play, but the 4th one wanted to finish his dinner alone. But wherever he went, the others followed him, wanting to play. Poor little caracal, Donald said. I bet you want to enjoy your dinner alone. Just then, Donald noticed that the sun was setting and it was getting quite chilly. I'll light the fire to keep us warm, he said. Donald lit his campfire and the orange flames crackled. Finally, the 3 caracal ran off and played together, leaving their brother to enjoy his dinner by the warm fire. I know how you feel, little caracal, Donald said. Sometimes I like to be alone too. When the caracal finished eating, he joined his brothers and sisters. Donald put out his campfire and went to bed. Next time, maybe I'll invite my family. Or maybe not. Being subversive in Disney. In some way, that's not that subversive. I made Daisy a real feminist freedom fighter and things. It was real. And Donald hates hanging out with the other characters. So as mentioned, I edit Shoreline of Infinity, Scotland's only sci-fi magazine. So I thought I'd read a sci-fi poem. You can buy the collection over there. And this is kind of about empathy, I suppose. Sci-fi allows us to think about how we might interact with other species as well as each other. The ant swap. I bend an ear to your sound, put my knees in the dirt, offer my orifices to you like doorways to march into me. And a quick trek, and I hope you'll find, like Tom's first flirt with noise, enough voice to speak to me in antennas and eyes. I say, the stone, through the grass, dirt, stick, and then the heat of sugar, the prized melting flesh of roadkill. You say, the sky, through the atmosphere, stratosphere, and then the heat of stars, the prized melting flesh of my cosmos. I'll finish with a kind of love poem, I guess. Apologies to anyone who's seen me before, because I always read the same things, I think. It's based on a true story. It's about my first kiss. The first kiss. What a disappointment. Nothing like the movies. Nothing like the mind. A mass of muscles writhing, an awkward hand on a tightened arse at the under-16s Angel and Demons Night. What a farce. Is this the limbo stick for life? Where are the fireworks? The butterflies exploding like fireworks into a glorious rainbow of wings and ash. My son will sit with me and I'll tell him the truth, that there's no word to fit a feeling of lust and immediate unrest, or the lingering taste, the pleasure, the alien of a first kiss. There's no word, I'll tell him, for the particular fullness that breaks through the lungs and fills you with the breath of their hair, for the sudden rush of two hands clambering until the fingers find each other and grip. Grip to that, I'll tell him, and be thankful for the imperfection of love, and that the first kiss is nothing like you expected. Thank you.
So I've got a selection of poems that I'm going to read. One of the things I do at work is post poems on LinkedIn, usually based on like Forbes headlines or things that people think sound inspiring but are actually just recruitment bullshit. So, but to give you an idea of who I am on LinkedIn, if I'm standing up like this in my profile picture, I rearranged it so I'm like that. I say that I went to Hoobastank University, and right. So one of the things that happens on LinkedIn is if you get a new job, it comes up in people's feeds, so you can say congrats on the new job. And when I changed my job to this, I got congratulations on the new job from somebody I didn't know, which for a job that said Dreamweaver in the Ferrero Rocher Extended Universe. So I'm going to read a bunch of poems with like titles literally stolen from other people's inspirational bullshit. So, because I'm a temp and what I forget to do. So this is called Making Recruiters Come to You. Have you tried drawing recruiters with magnets? You are the North Pole and they are the South. Opposites charged towards each other. A bull to a flag, a cake to a mouth. Have you tried hosting a recruiter's bake sale? Luring them with warm bread and delights? Showcasing your skills in the morning after hours of working all through the night? Have you tried sending your CV in bulk? Not once or twice, but more than 10 times. They will appreciate your commitment and effort. They will find your enthusiasm well within line. Have you tried becoming a recruiter instead? Taking up work at the split in the river where you can see where the jobs go, panning for work like mining for silver. Have you tried sending your CV again? It's been a week and you've heard not one word. They must warn you, your skills are unique. To give up just now would be quite absurd. Have you tried sending your CV again? Rearranging the words, adapting your skills, making up jobs and rewriting your past, saying what they want to hear and going for the kill. Have you tried sending your CV again? 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 You're trying too hard and it shows. There's one key thing millennials want at work. Horses. 10 things recruiters look for in your LinkedIn profile. Obviously I've got all of these in mind. 1. Make sure there is one lie in your profile. Recruiters know you are flawed, no one is perfect after all, and making things up is an important part of demonstrating a human touch. 2. Make sure there is at least one visible owl in your photo. 3. If you have employment gaps, fill them with descriptions of your most frequent daydreams. 4. Embed your profile with a deep monotone hum, something from an expensive synthesizer or your dad singing the lowest note he can manage. 5. Rock hard abs. 6. Emphasize your desire to be killed in combat. 7. Put your email address in a visible space. How else are you supposed to get feedback on your poetry? 8. Wear a watch in your photo. Be warned though, you must make sure the time is correct at all times, or recruiters will think you're wearing a broken watch. 9. Good content. Recruiters want to know you can churn out the good stuff, day after day, hour after hour. Never-ending content from dawn till dusk and back again. 10. A birthmark, like the one on your left clavicle, the one that looks a bit like Greenland. You can see it on the tip of your profile picture, but only if you know what you're looking for. The recruiters on LinkedIn are looking for you, aren't they? Not me, but you. Specifically you. They are hunting you, and they will find you, and when they do, they will offer you a job, and that job will be terrible, but you're desperate, and you have no other choice, and you can run, and you can apply for other jobs, but the market's tough right now, and you can't run forever, and you're exhausted. My God, are you exhausted? Job vacancy. There is a vacancy and it is U-shaped. There is a vacancy and we need to fill it. There is a vacancy and it's to my right. It's in the space next to me where Dan used to sit, used to work and answer the phone. It is the space where Dan used to sit, used to work and answer the phone. Wasn't it? Wasn't it? There is only darkness there now, and it has swallowed everything else. And the memories of him, the colours of his eyes, everything is gone except this vacancy. And this vacancy is U-shaped. What a nice surprise. There's a vacancy, and it is U-shaped, it is growing, and it is growing, it is making it hard to work. I cannot concentrate anymore, and when I sleep, the darkness swells, it expands into my personal space, and tells me it must eat. And when I wake and go to work, it is there before me like an overwhelming ache. It tells me that if I'm not quick, there will be a me-shaped vacancy next to me. So please, fill the vacancy next to me, and if you cannot fill the vacancy, send help! 10 things to never ever say in an interview. Oh, and just to say, all that stuff on my LinkedIn profile was there when my last boss had an interview with me, and then I still got the job, so... 10 things to never ever say in an interview. 1. I am confident. 2. I am a leader in my field, and that field leading. 3. Aren't these chairs nice? 4. This water's really good, where did you get it? 5. I'm a huge fan of skywriting. 6. Can I take a picture of the chair? I want to show my girlfriend. 7. The air we breathe gets more polluted every day. 8. I'm interested in results. Have you seen the latest results? They're good. I like them. 9. In 5 years, I hope to be sitting in your chair. Can you pass me a marker pen? I need that exact chair. I don't want to lose track of it. 10. Sometimes at night, I think I can feel the planet turning. There's one key thing millennials want at work. Chocolate raisins. So don't endorse me, you cowards. Endorse me for poetry on LinkedIn. 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 Endorse me, you cowards. Endorse me. Seriously, do have me on LinkedIn. And endorse me for poetry. It really hurts. This one's called A Business of One. Yes, there's 2 more. You're a business of one. You are a business of one. This means when you wake up, you are already on the clock. This means when you sleep, you dream of reports and contracts and deals. This means when you eat lunch, you're eating into your own profits. Be careful where you stand. The floor is made of money. You are a business of one. This means that meetings are straightforward. You know what direction you want the business to go in. This means coming up with ideas for the Christmas party is easy. This means synergy is a strange combination of narcissism and masturbation. Be careful what you say, the walls have ears, you know. You are a business of one. This means that profits do not have to be shared. This means glory belongs to you. This means that your confidence isn't misplaced. But be careful what you wish for, because the market doesn't care. You are a business of one, but then everyone is a business of one, and everyone is exhausted. You are a burden, a business of one, but then all your friends are also a business of one, and you haven't seen them in weeks. You are a business of one, and when the business fails, like all businesses fail, they'll point to your failings and say there was no one to blame but yourself. feel trapped in your job. Sign up to the latest jobs newsletters, consider going back to university, research the training you need to get a new job, measure the distance between your desk and the door, wander the office while tapping the walls to figure out where the weak points are, make lists of the people who have the power to come and go, monitor their schedules and adapt this to suit you, write messages in code and slide them through the cracks in the window, download Tor browsers and encryption software and send cryptic messages out into the ether, stay late at the office and impress your colleagues with your work ethic, while your boss sleeps, sneak into the canteen and steal a plastic spoon, and with that spoon, dig a tunnel. Dig it when your boss goes for coffee, dig it when your boss goes for lunch, dig it in the evening after work, dig until you can no longer see your desk, dig for days and weeks and months, dig when you are strong, dig when it feels like hope is running out, dig when you are lost, dig until you've been endorsed for digging on LinkedIn, dig until you can no longer see home, dig until exhaustion is gnawing your bones, dig until there is only mud and darkness and blood and bud and hunger and desperation and heat, and until the darkness becomes prickled by distant light, until the earth and the sky merge, dig until you arrive at your new place of work. Not this.
Yes, this is going to be a bit of a tone shift. I apologize. There's just no following that. Inheritance. You've had that dream again. You know the one that wakes you. You rise to rough wood floors, doors that only ever open in, whining away as if they could blame you for wanting to leave. But you're alive, and can't help feeling forgotten, somewhere in your body like a wreck in deep water. When you walk out to your car, the grey light is shot with green and salt, your senses pressing so heavily around you it gets hard to breathe, and even the sky weighs enough these days to crush the best of them. You sometimes hear what sounds like small bones splinter. Come on, be reasonable, think it through, yet it hurts every time you think of it. End of this unhorsed town no one really grows up in. The greys and the one bar that every evening seems to lead to like numbers on a clock. It's always a little behind the time. Isn't this the life you asked for? The hand-me-down that looked so good on your big brother, worn thin over you now, thin over your shoulders, your ribs like the empty substation your brother's friends haunted as kids, consecrating it with stolen beer and piss, but you made it your temple, imagining how gods once hummed in the wiring, the rituals, the sacrifice. But even then you'd begun to find yourself beneath your senses, your body just some house you inherited, never really yours, the taste of rust, iron in your synapse, the touch come apart at the seam. You know there are people in foreign countries, their language reaching right now like a hand for your life, their voices like rain along a window pane, pooling in the sun-sealed dirt, the husks of wheat, the wind piled against the baseboards. When the TV goes out, when the lights let slip their shadows, for a moment you can nearly feel someone. You wonder, what, if not you, will reach back when you wake in the dark? Who do you think you are? Yeah, so I've got 5 points. So I grew up in Canada, and this pamphlet's kind of, I guess, sort of centered around that. And I've been asked to read poems that I don't normally read tonight, because a few people have heard me read before. So I'm going to do one that I had to record recently, and I hate the sound of my own voice, and so it took me way more tries than it really should have. But I think I finally come around to being able to read this poem again. It's, of course, a very, very happy poem, so have fun with that. It's called Still Life with Approaching Crow. There's nothing to distinguish this from the last 3 or so hundred fields they pass, but for whatever reason they call it far enough. The engine shaking off its sound, voices dripping from their mouths to the ground. When they say let's go, they won't mean everyone this time. Beyond, a field frozen solid, expressionless, stubbled with broken grain. They'll leave him, loose as teeth in his life, lashed to a fence post, blood gently unlacing the features from his face and every wound unwinding from its pain like wire. It'll be days before anyone can tie the term missing to what it has to mean. The field in his flesh, grows significance against their will. So the chapbook just arrived today, which means I'm not actually sure. I haven't worked out my reading schedule on this yet, so bear with me a second. I think I'd like to read this one, which the chapbook is called Glean, and this is like sort of the title poem, but it's called Gleaning. I didn't really want, I couldn't quite commit to having a actual title poem. So I don't think there's anything to say about this, it's just called Gleaning. On hands and knees, you take what you call the middle ground. If a god can be found here, it's because he couldn't commit either, combing like waves the shingle, wanting just some scrap worth settling on. Life, at least, has settled on your body like silt on that wreck no one survived. When you wake daily, it's as if washed ashore. When you wish, it's 100 life rafts, beacons swimming in the dark. Imagine the language for these are no different. You pray and it's enough. Instead you lie awake, knotting sheets, small hours heaped up like driftwood. You could manage, make do, get by, and you can, but there's a loss for every light, for every sense's salvage. Just to be alive to this world is an act of war. You know that to take a hand, some small thing will go unheld. Hands alone keep loss from reclamation. Only in this language is the sky something less than heaven. I'm afraid. I translate French, and I've always liked the idea that in French the sky is, the term for sky and heaven are pretty much synonymous, whereas in English it's obviously not true. I want you to bear with me for a second. I have a friend named Max Rick who passed away a couple of years ago after leaving this phenomenal book, and since he can't be around to read his own work, I would really like to read one of his poems for you tonight before I finish with one of my own, and it's a doozy. Please. This is called Afternoon. When I was about to die, my body lit up, like when I leave my house without my wallet. What am I missing? I ask, patting my chest pocket. And I am missing everything living that won't come with me into this sunny afternoon. My body lights up for life like all the wishes being granted in a fountain at the same instant, all the coins burning the fountain dry, and I give my breath to a small bird-shaped pipe. In the distance, behind several voices haggling, I hear a sound like heads clicking together, like a game of pool played with people by machines.
Thanks very much, Dave. I just want to highlight, on all of your seats there's a little seat packet. We just want you to share some empathy with Eric as well. Plant your seats and send us some pictures of them, if you can. It will really help Hudel with the social media side of our company. So,
and guys, we're building to one of the most anticipated events of the evening. A chance to win a couple of books called Witch Doctor Askew's featured, as well as a number of other excellent books. I highly encourage you to check them out.
I'm here. I had a speech prepared. I'm not going to do that. You know why? The poets ruined it for me. Russell. Where's Ross? It's Ross. You're a tough act to follow. Is Patrick still here? Oh, Patrick. The rock star poet of my dreams. And then, after I finish this, Alycia and Claire have to go behind me, so I'm not going to give the speech I prepared. Because we've talked to Briana. Thank you for giving the best speech on empathy that I have ever heard. Clarissa, thank you for following that. And Ailsa, thank you for playing in Kirsty. I'm so grateful to everybody here today, all of our classmates. David, I see you. I love you, David. I love you. David has offered to get me and my husband Mark in shape. We're a little bit overweight, but David has offered to get us Chris Pratt and Scarlett Johansson bodies in 2 months. Thank you, David, you beautiful creature. Hudia. She's been there filming. She didn't want to come up. She didn't want me to acknowledge her for the strong, beautiful woman of color she is. But she's so sexy, Hudia. If only I was married and could date you, you'd be the one. But I have made that promise to a lot of people. So Paige Smith, I have said that to you, and Chelsea, I believe I told you I would marry you, and Eloise, and I have made that promise to everybody. Claire, you're next. I do want to say one thing that I was told not to say. 2 things that I was told not to say. Number 1. Read it. Dearly beloved, that is the artist formerly known as Prince. Dearly beloved, we have gathered here today to get through this thing called life. And let those words sink in. And if we can, the people in this room, if we can really love each other, we can really connect. To me, empathy is about connection. If you can all connect with me and I can connect with you, and we can all connect with each other. I'm talking spiritual connection. If we do that, we win. Okay? We win. And number 2, I can't believe I'm saying this, but she wants to be anonymous, but I have a great friend here, and she gets drunk with me every Friday. We go at 12 p.m. or 1 p.m., we drink a lot of gin, and we talk about how much our life sucks and how we're never going to make it. Because we're old. But we're not really. We're 30. And that is the prime of our lives. We're so sexy and wholesome, and I just love being 30, right? Right? So that friend who is a poet, and it rhymes with Paige Smith. Okay, so that poem she gave me a quote to live by, and I don't think I should say it because it's very provocative, and we're living in... You're not going to say it? Well, just hold on. But I'm just building up to it because it's provocative times, and this video could end up on YouTube and ruin my writing career. If you all know the rapper from America, Nelly, Band-Aid, do we all appreciate his work? And he said something that means a lot to me, and it means a lot to Paige. And we almost used it for Claire Askew's introduction, but we thought she deserved a little bit of a classier time. But he said something that means a lot to me, and what he said was, Paige, what was it that he said? Come on, what is the point of making all this money if I can't fuck all the models? And what that means to me is, what's the point of living? We're not doing what we love. We're not connecting. I'm not asking for an emoji here. I'm not asking you to buy Nelly's albums. But he is hot tamale. Hot, so hot. I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking to take something from the evening, practice what we preach, and love each other. But not love each other. But love each other. Now, I'm going to just read the last bit because I have to introduce Alycia. And I just want to read officially. Tonight, here's a Cuban woman who immigrated with her parents to the United States at the age of 6. Somehow, over 2 decades later, I find myself living in Scotland, writing all about the things that happened back then. This is why I connect with Alycia and why I admire her so much. She's a Canadian-born poet. Her own writing is an exploration of what it means to be the daughter of immigrants. It grapples with the language of loss, cultural identity, and displacement. I want you to give her a warm welcome because these are issues that need to be talked about, and I really respect the work she's doing. Alycia Pirmohamed.
I'll start by reading the 2 poems that are actually in the issue of VintageYes. It's a really gorgeous issue. I got to look through it today, and I hope you've all seen it, and if you haven't, you should all look at it. And also online, they have a bunch of other great work. They have a Women in Color series as well. So if you haven't seen that yet, also something to check out. There we go. In this dream, I fly over a canyon filled with faces. I am guided by a garland of my mother's voice, the slip and echo of contralto, a stammer in the low height of the troposphere. It weaves water into silk, and silk into sari, and in this dream I become a wren with pleated feathers, a songbird daughter eating sweets. How many of those faces are my own? How many daughters eating jalebi? How many canyons filled with versions of selves that I have shed and even killed? I am shaped like my country, but only one of them. I am shaped like loss. I wake up, not as the bird, but as the canyon. Here is my silence. This antagonistic, serrated version of myself is not unlike the coyotes we watch stalk the ice. I want to explain, to tell you how these fires around me were never started by my hands. But I do not explain how you are a universal experience I long for. I am not that coyote, not that half-bitten nail-shaped truth. Yes, sometimes I stay awake reading not science fiction, not my favorite lyric poems, but brutality. Here is the ebb and flow of anger, and enough sorrow to last 3 more days. Sorrow 1, sorrow 2, sorrow 3. Do you understand that this is the title of everything I make? I see my eyes everywhere, in all things. And when I say eyes, I mean enemy. Believe me, sometimes I whisper in the dark as your arm reaches across the skin it took months to let me see. I can't blame you for not listening. I blame you for not listening. And then the couple of poems that are on an issue. How we begin. A small stone, an animal's heart, a throb. Tell me again about the bloodhound that chases you into lark black sky. I am sorry because I know this story bleeds, and the scent of it stirs awake the meteoric dark, the hall. Tell me again about the wound that is my wound. The first slur you heard, and the last syllable you spoke. I am my own beast. I tear apart my body in search for milk. I am subdued only by your voice. So tell me again about the faces that fled the wind, and I will apologize. Invitation. Somewhere they are kneeling, and I am forgetting your name. How to hold each fragment of sound in my mouth. Allah. My thoughts are scattering in the wind. They land in Dar es Salaam, in India, in miles of golden grass. Sometimes they fall into my own palms as I pray next to my father for my father. My father, I am discovering how to feel loneliness in a series of languages by cutting open each word like a dark black palm, only to eat the skin. Tell me I am a little closer to the beginning, that I am a young tree on the side of a mountain, a bird circling a volcano, or simply a sound traveling vertical. Thank you.
My name is Paige Smith, and I'm a poetry editor for 50GS, and this is going to be a lot tamer than you've led to believe, so don't get your hopes up. I'm here to introduce our next speaker, Claire Askew. Claire is a poet, novelist, and the current writer-in-residence at the University of Edinburgh. Her debut novel, All the Hidden Truths, won the 2016 Lucy Cavendish Fiction Prize, and is forthcoming from Hodder and Stoughton in August 2018. Claire's debut poetry collection, This Changes Things, was published by Blood Axe in 2016 and was shortlisted for various national awards, including the Saltire First Book Prize. She's currently working on her second novel, working titled Operation Citron. Claire's a great inspiration to all of us in the creative writing program because she shows us that we can absolutely excel both in poetry and prose. And since all of us on the editorial staff have been lucky enough to share our work with her in workshops, I think we can all attest to her incredible empathy.
Thank you, Paige. That's considerably nicer than what's the point of having all this money if we can't. Although I really appreciate that also. Thank you guys for being such a great audience. You've been really lovely for everybody. I'm not going to talk too much, but I just want to say how proud I am of these amazing students who've put together this incredible magazine. Everyone who's worked on it and everyone who's contributed to it has done really, really well. It's a gorgeous thing, so I think give them a round of applause. It's always a bad idea to I was really happy to be asked to read at this event, given that the theme is empathy. I have written this novel, which explores a lot of things, but one of the things it explores is empathy and the limits of empathy. As Paige says, it's called All the Hidden Truths. It's not out until August, so I'm reading to you from the proof. I'm sorry, I have nothing for the merch table. I'll tell you a little bit about this, and then I'll just read you a short section. At the start of this book, there is a college shooting, and in a wholly, inadequate act, I do want to dedicate this reading to anyone affected by the Parkland shooting last week. It makes my novel very topical, and it's kind of hard to get up and read from it when these things keep on happening. The novel is set in Edinburgh because I think there's a lot of feeling in the United Kingdom that this is something that happens somewhere else, it's not something that would ever happen here, and actually having worked a lot with young men who are in the crucible of anger and toxic masculinity, I actually think it would be very easy for it to happen here. So at the beginning of this novel there is a shooting, and a young man named Ryan walks into his further education college and shoots down 30 of his female classmates. And the book then follows 3 women who are dealing with the aftermath of this event. One of them is the mother of the first victim, whose name is Abigail. One of them is the policewoman who's charged with leading the investigation. And then the third character is Moira, who's the mother of Ryan, the gunman. And I'm going to read you a section from her narrative. She's just been brought home to her house at this point, the family house where she now lives on her own. She's been brought back by her family liaison officer, Amy, and this is the first time she's been in the house for over a week because she's been receiving death threats and she's been in protective custody. And we find her here just as she's kind of arrived, and she's been settling in by basically self-medicating with a drink. Moira was halfway up the stairs before she really knew where she was going. In a blur of tears, she'd come back out through the dining room and into the hallway. Behind the frosted glass front door, the neon pillar of a policeman. She climbed the stairs, gripping the banister with one unsteady hand, the other still clutching at the slippery tumbler. At the top of the stairs, she took a long mouthful of the stinging gin. It had started to feel warm. Ryan? It was habit. It was what she always did. Are you decent, sweetheart? Her throat made an odd, chuckling sound. She stood outside her son's bedroom door and laughed at her own ridiculousness. All right, she said, time's up, I'm coming in. But her little charade on the landing, even coupled with the gin, hadn't prepared her for her dead son's bedroom. The scene of crime officers had torn the room apart. The divan bed had been tipped onto its narrow end and now obscured the window like a monolith, its mattress stacked against it. The fabric sides had been ripped back so the divan's cavity could be searched. All the furniture was pulled out into the middle of the room, her face stung with embarrassment at the dust and detritus they'd revealed. The washing basket and drawers from the dresser had been upended on top of a pile of clean cotton shirts she'd ironed only days before. The computer desk was the only thing that looked wrong in this disaster zone. It had been swept completely clean. Every item Ryan had piled on it had been taken away somewhere. The big PC monitor had been there so long that now it had been removed. The square of wallpaper it had stood against was darker than the rest of the room. She could see the strange residue left all over by fingerprinting kits. She pressed the light switch, but for some reason the bulb in the ceiling light had been taken. "Look at this mess," she said, a voice guttering like a candle flame. "Makes you look practically tidy, Ryan." She sank fast into the leather computer chair, slopping a little constellation of drink across the carpet. Her face was damp. The chair was covered in fingerprint powder, and now she guessed, so were her clothes. The wallpaper began to swim. With her free hand, she reached up and slapped herself in the face. The slap landed with a pleasantly wet sound, but she barely felt it. She tried again, this time a sting. The third time, a little blistering of stars across her vision. "Jesus," she said through her teeth, "pull yourself together." She sat in the chair for a long time. She could feel herself sliding down into more of a crouch, slowly, a millimetre at a time. She realised she was enjoying the sensation. In the quiet, she could hear the paparazzi talking outside. There was no hoarding on this window to dampen the sound. She was surprised and oddly disappointed that the few voices she could pick out from the throng were not talking about her, or Ryan, or the shooting. Instead, they seemed to be using that macho code that signalled they were speaking of a forthcoming sporting event. She tried to follow but couldn't even guess the sport, let alone the occasion. She wondered why on earth they were here. Who on earth could think it was a good idea to be paying them? She didn't think about how long they might stay. The watery sun fell behind the roof of the house across the street, and the light in the room changed. Vehicles began to pull up at the cordon a few houses down. Moira could hear their distant chug, the whoosh and slam of sliding side doors. These were the TV news crews, coming with kit and correspondents to broadcast live for the evening audience. Amy had warned her they'd come, and as she'd said it, Moira found herself wishing the front garden was tidier, the downpipes more recently painted. She could hear these new arrivals shouting commands, clinking tripods and the poles of booms. If they were going to broadcast, she thought, then she might as well watch. She abandoned Ryan's wrecked bedroom and walked back out into the dim, windowless landing. She paused for a moment, peering down the stairs into the hallway. From here she could make out a wedge of front door, that yellow smudge of the policeman's neon coat hanging in the panel of glass. She closed her eyes, listening for the scrape of a key. As if any minute now, her son would come slamming into the hall, dump his bag and shoes, and, if she was lucky, shout a gruff hello on his way up the stairs. "I'm just asleep," she thought. "This is just one of those dreams you have, the kind that shakes you up enough that you tell it to your friends after." A wave of tiredness settled over her, but something in her brain kicked in to flick her eyelids open as she swayed. "Ryan," she whispered, "sweetheart." But behind her the trashed room was still trashed. Moira stumbled along the landing to her own bedroom and found that it had also been searched. More of an effort had been made to restore things to their natural order, but the room still looked like a high wind had blown through. She found the kicked remote on the floor and switched the TV on. It took around 30 seconds for the studio newsreader to say her son's name. "The gunman, Ryan Summers," he began, and she scrabbled for the mute button, was pronounced dead at the scene. Too late. They cut to a picture of Ryan's face, his last school photo, a few years old now. Ryan in his navy school sweater, the stiff white collar of his shirt sitting wonky in its pilled V-neck. He was smiling but didn't look happy. A handful of years back he decided he hated having his photograph taken, and they'd cropped out the sky blue backdrop so the details of her dead son's face filled the screen. The school must have supplied that picture to the police. Ryan looked uncomfortable, she thought, impatient with sitting there. She remembered the fuss they used to have getting him ready for the school picture. Back when he was little, Moira had a friend named Tanya, a training hairdresser. She wasn't very good, but she drove around the city doing cheap haircuts for the kids of friends. Ryan had felt an irrational hatred towards her. He associated her with the hated day of the school photo. She'd turn up in her elderly red Ford Escort, and Ryan would spend the next 40 minutes being as rude to her as he thought he could get away with under his mother's gaze. Moira shivered. What if the press find her? She found herself thinking. Tanya could tell some stories about Ryan, that he was sullen, underhand, manipulative. That's not who he was, she said aloud to the newsreader whose mute lips were moving rapidly. I know him better than anyone. But she realised that meant nothing now. She wasn't even sure if it was true. She had let this happen after all. She didn't want to think about how. Ryan's photo came up on the screen again. The expression would be read by those who didn't know him as creepy. They'd think they could see something obviously wrong in his eyes. She reached out and touched the screen, her fingertips prickled by static. But he was gone. They'd switched to aerial footage of the college car park filled with kids and white police vehicles with blue flashing roofs. She sat down on the corner of the bed. The curtains had been pulled wonkily shut, and in the gloom the muted TV glowed so bright her eyes smarted. Photographs of young women began to appear on the screen in a kind of slideshow. A girl smudged with mud grinning on a hockey field, a girl in a satin prom dress wearing a beaded tiara. Moira counted them, 13. They were all beaming and unbearably beautiful. These were photographs their families had been allowed to choose. Their families. What were their lives like right now? Did they have police scene guards, crowds of journalists outside their houses? What must they think of her? Moira simultaneously wished she knew and hoped she would never find out. The final photograph lingered on the screen longer than the others, and Moira knew without turning the sound back on that they were talking about Abigail Hodgkiss. Her photo was a fancy studio portrait, probably done for her 18th. She was wearing a coral-coloured lipstick that made her teeth look very white. A fat yellow locket hung round her neck. She wasn't the perfect-looking girl that Moira realised she'd been imagining. She had freckles. She didn't look like the sort of woman that men killed for. Moira felt a flash of anger, blood draining out of her head towards her heart, making her feel faint. She closed her eyes and saw patterns. What had she done, this Abigail, to Ryan? Ryan, the little dark-haired boy, laughing in the back garden in the bright ring of his hula hoop. Surely this girl had hurt him. Surely she'd done something to him that was so bad he'd become angrier than he'd ever been. There had to be a reason. Moira leaned over, put her face next to the screen. Up close she could see the million tiny coloured dots that made up Abigail's eyes. What did you do? She hissed, but the fight was ebbing out of her. When she leaned back, she realised Abigail was small, fine-boned, thin-limbed. She was awkward-looking. This girl was weak, had been. Moira knew Abigail hadn't done a single thing.